Welcome back to The Innovation Brief, the podcast where we have real conversations with leaders driving meaningful change across diverse sectors. I'm Matt Briggs. In each episode, we speak with innovation leaders exploring the ideas, challenges, and breakthroughs shaping the future of our world. Today, we'll be diving into what innovation looks like behind the scenes of a major multinational consumer brand. Our guest is Gordon Hamilton, Digital Innovation Lead at Heineken. Gordon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here.
Let's start off. Could you please, first of all, tell us a little bit about your role as Digital Innovation Lead at Heineken? I think it would be great to hear sort of what digital innovation means beyond just the buzzwords for a, 150-year-old brewing company like Heineken?
Yeah, it's definitely a long-standing company. So my role in Heineken is relatively new. Our department restructured last year, and that included a digital innovation lead. So this is similar to the structure that we have in our global counterparts in Amsterdam and have had success with over the last 6 or so years. Having the autonomy to do digital innovation ourselves in the UK is probably the most complex operating company for Heineken, is really empowering. It's acknowledging the fact that digital is where progress is, and to stay relevant, we need to enable pockets across the organisation to challenge that status quo and introduce new technologies to create better experiences for our customers, consumers, and our colleagues.
Could you maybe kind of give us a bit of a dive into what that actually means at a company like Heineken? So kind of what are the typical areas of the business that digital innovation is touching?
Yeah, so it's really open to any parts of the business. We do see a lot of digital innovation really being applied well to our on-trade sector, because in the UK we have our own pub base that we own. So it's really impactful for us because we can see the full end-to-end data and what impact any digital innovation that we're doing has on those pubs. And other areas, most importantly, are things like supply chain. They really do benefit from digital initiatives that are going on in there. We see that a lot. Things like digital twins that we see happening as an example. But yes, there's a lot of benefit to be had, including things like marketing as well.
I'm interested in what digital innovation might look like in a pub, actually. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that.
For us, we look at consumer trends and so on across our pub network. And one of the things that we recognise is that it's quite difficult to capture the interest of younger generations. And the pub model has been quite stagnant for some time now, and it's one that doesn't really change. It's just you go in, you have a nice drink and you bond with people, create some memories, and then you leave. So we're trying to look at how can we leverage technology within those pubs to try and enhance that experience without deteriorating the overall quality that people would come to know and love about going and visiting their local pub.
Perhaps you could give us an example of that kind of technology?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, we have a technology that's in our pubs and has been for some years now called Smart Dispense. And what that piece of kit does is in the cellars, you don't really see it as a consumer, but what it's there to do is to make sure that your beer is being poured correctly. It's low maintenance in terms of cleaning the lines. It makes sure that it's getting there without any issues in terms of yeast and things like that growing in the lines. It keeps it all kind of cold and fresh, but it also makes sure that there's less issues for the customer themselves and they don't have as much maintenance concerns. What we have been doing with that is enabling kind of devices and data to be pulled out of it, which allows us to be proactive in managing those customers, making sure that any problems that we do see happening, that we can manage those and resolve them without the customer being impacted.
Yeah, I can imagine it might be quite challenging to bring innovations like that into a pub setting. People can be quite particular about the way that their beer is served and poured. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you found with kind of a heritage brand like Heineken in bringing in digital innovation. What are some of the barriers that you find when bringing digital innovation to pubs and to other parts of the business?
I mean, you called this out. It's a 150-year-old brand. It's quite a big one to manage. And for us, it's really obvious. It's governance. whilst there are some smaller operating companies within Heineken who can do things at much quicker pace than we can in the UK, the UK does have a lot to manage between data, cybersecurity, vendors that we work with just because of our scale. So the costs to implement solutions are much higher. And so we have that bigger risk to manage. You do have that big name brand on your shoulders to protect. A lot of customers and consumers that we work with. So just we need to make sure that if something goes wrong, we try and avoid that at all costs, because you're obviously going to get a lot of reputational damage with everything going on in this day and age.
We touched earlier on kind of the tradition of going to the pub, socializing, going for a drink, leaving. It's kind of, been a thing that people do that has remained relatively unchanged for a long time. But how are you seeing consumption patterns starting to change now? Are Gen Z and younger millennials doing things differently? Have you had to rethink your innovation strategy to connect with those groups?
Yeah, so I think this is universal across the FMCG market. It's not really isolated within Heineken, especially in alcohol brands. I mean, I've been looking at stats now for some time, and the change in sentiment from your Gen Z and surveys is their attitude towards alcohol. The message that you typically see in platform sharing was up to 30% of Gen Zs are drinking less than their previous generations at the same age. And the initial reason was health conscious behaviours. So you might have seen lots of brands coming out with new products that promote health conscious behaviours. But then when you scratched beneath the surface of that, it actually reveals that it's mostly economic factors that are impacting them. So they feel like they don't have the privilege of time to go out and drink and being hungover the next day. So they need to prioritise earning as much as possible to make ends meet. They just simply have less expendable income. It's a big talking point right now for Heineken, especially in the UK. We do what we can to connect with this generation and not to alienate them from future engagement. We've actually created a new team called Beyond Beer. So they've been acquiring smaller brands such as Served, which is one that's made by Ellie Goulding and another couple of founders. It's all kind of pre-mixed cocktails. So we're trying to branch out from typical beer and cider, even just innovating on those, making them a little bit more fruity and offering more low and no alcohol drinks. So not only this, but on our radar is also knowing that the kind of younger generations see alcohol as a supplementary to activities. So you see more things like activity bars popping up and being popular, like Flight Club, Boom Battle Bar, NQ64, and so on.
Interesting. So would you say then perhaps there are some misconceptions still around what actually Gen Z are looking for from alcohol? And perhaps it's not necessarily that they want to cut it out completely. They just actually want to have it as a part of those other experiences.
Yeah, so I think the misconception is that the thought that alcohol sells itself, it's just becoming very short-lived. Generations have changed gradually. We even seen that with millennials, but the newest generation drinking habits have changed more drastically than the last. And that's something that we can't really avoid. That's really obviously happening in the world. I did touch on this already, but what consumers want is more activities and experiences. The emerging trend for any brand out there, not just drinking brands, is hyper-personalized content. So whether that's something that's digital or physical, it's quite irrelevant. But they want to move away from tech as well. So Gen Z, especially with COVID fatigue, they're okay with it being a supplement to a physical experience. But we're seeing a lot of movement away from things like VR.
Perhaps you could share a specific example with us of where Gen Z feedback has completely changed the direction of an innovation project at Heineken.
An example of this happening is, and it has some digital elements to it, but it's focused on a specific product. A lot of this is to do with being just after COVID, when everyone was looking at digital experiences to get people engaging with that lack of physical interaction existing. So you might be aware of this. So we launched a new product called Heineken Silver, and it was through the VR platform called Decentraland as part of the metaverse. We made it a big hosted event for the product, including live music event inside the platform. Heineken Silver as a brand was aimed at a younger generation who were seen to dislike the taste of beer. So it was a lower alcohol percentage from the regular Heineken, tasted less like a typical beer, less bitter. But the concept was a trial from the digital innovation team within our global office, and it missed the mark. It was a learning bit, and we took that feedback. There was that digital fatigue from COVID. People were fed up. They wanted to be in real life experiences, but without stating the obvious, you can't drink in VR. So it kind of doesn't really work for brands that are all about drinking things. Whilst the brand itself has worked in other opcos, it has fallen out of favour in the UK to the point we don't sell Heineken Silver in the UK anymore.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure the idea of having a meeting up for a virtual beer sounds that appealing to me. So yeah, that's interesting to hear. I was wondering also, maybe you could tell us a bit about Heineken Studio, which I think it's billed kind of as your playground for experimentation. What does that mean, and kind of how do you balance that experimentation with kind of the governance and the global brand standards that you have in such a large company as Heineken?
I know of Heineken Studio. I had to do a bit of digging on this one. I've been over, so I was over in Amsterdam recently and seen it, but it is definitely not us that run it. It's a global team. But you're right in saying it is an innovation playground. So it's where we kind of open the doors of our research and development to consumers. So we take measured risks with kind of small volumes, clearly presenting everything as a prototype. It's not a done deal product that we're going to launch. We're transparent about that fact, and it's just all part of a learning process. The idea is that consumers are trying something bold under the Heineken Studio brand with the aim of creating future experiences that are a bit more innovative, fun, and surprising for the master brand.
Talking about the studio, what's been the most unexpected insight that has perhaps challenged your assumptions about how people want to experience beer?
The studio is quite early days. It did start just in March, where they opened the doors. It's purely tested in the Netherlands for our limited edition Mocom 750, and it's in France and Spain with foam infusions. So it's quite a piece of magic where they're using Heineken as a base product, and then they add flavoured foam made from liquor and fruit juice, just to kind of add zesty flavours, I guess, to the beer and try and play around with the different flavour profiles. It's to try and stretch the lager, make it a bit bold, make it new, unexpected directions. They add sweet, herbal, spicy, wild yeasts. So it's all kind of there to just be trialed and tested with consumers. But because that's all into one tap, it means that it's not like a huge effort to try and do that. We're also testing a few beer delivery systems, and they're going to start sharing some learnings from that soon by the end of the summer.
Yeah, I remember when I visited a friend who lived in Bordeaux in France, actually, and it was really common there for them to make, I think they called it beer pêche. So they would have beer with some peach syrup in it. So it sounds like maybe that's kind of, yeah, inspiration perhaps for that project.
Yeah. I wouldn't be saying that name in Scotland, otherwise you might get some looks for you.
Yeah, you're right. Another project that I've been reading a bit about was the Innovators Brew House, which is a platform that you use to crowdsource external ideas. It'd be interested to hear a bit more about that.
The brew house is something that was created 3 or 4 years ago, and it was in our global offices. So their digital innovation team came up with the concept, and it's just our Heineken spin on what an incubator is typically seen. So your Dragon's Den type approach, you invite startups to come along, and then you kind of pitch and decide which one you want to do a partnership with. So the Brewhouse is a great initiative, and we're actually hosting our own for the first time in the UK next week in our London office. So for me, the goal here is to solve a business problem that can create real value for the business, and whether that be for one business function or for more where possible. I would always consider the startups that we engage, the ones that get shortlisted for the pitching day, they would pass the kind of litmus test of where they would be a yes to at least two of the following questions. So it would be a typical, does it create something new and useful that neither Heineken or the startup could do alone? Is there deep integration from a technical, operational, strategic point of view? And will the end user's experience or value fundamentally change as a result?
So it sounds like you're looking there for kind of genuinely innovative partnerships, not just sort of marketing exercises. You're looking for things that have a real strategic fit. Is that right? Maybe you could give us an example of the kind of idea that's come through that program.
Yeah. So previous ones that have happened, I can use one that's going on in Africa at the moment. Within Africa, there's a number of outlets that we distribute to, but there are certain regions of Africa that basically are no-go zones for delivery drivers. And so they're working with local areas to try and, it's called the last mile, where they support and get people from the local areas to come and do that last mile delivery without fear of anything happening, which is quite an unusual one in comparison to other ones that we've done. We've done stuff that's more kind of technical focused. It's been virtual experiences within Vietnam during their street vendors parade and kind of sales of food and whatever that they've been doing. That was something that we tried to do to support the local economy because it was a big deal for them and they didn't have anything to do for COVID. We've also deployed in the US a startup that's been doing tagging on kind of point of sale material. That was helpful for us because it meant that we could track when point of sale material was actually making it to its, destination that we were intending it to go to, but it was also to make sure that the pubs were actually using it and it was adding value where it was supposed to. For the one that we're doing next week, our challenge statement that we're presenting is actually to do with how can we increase frequency of visit to pubs for Gen Z consumers.
And how do you go about collecting those challenge statements? Do you have a team that kind of work across the Heineken business trying to understand where potential opportunities are?
Yeah, so within my kind of wider remit, so we have a brand in Heineken called the Pixel Pioneers, which is trying to be a little bit more digital themed. And within that group, we have champions from each business function area. And with those people, we would then go through a kind of discovery session. We'll try and gather some insights. What are the pain points that we're seeing in those business functions? And where we can see something that's clearly defined, it's something that adds value. We can call it what that value is, but also making sure that we can tie it back to Heineken's strategy, that it actually is something that we're looking to achieve as part of our kind of strategic goals, whether that be a yearly or a 5-yearly outlook. So that's the kind of stuff that we've been doing thus far. And then once we've got it, we would just reflect that back to kind of senior management in each of those business function areas to make sure that it does align and that they're kind of sponsoring the event. And we've got it. So for this one that's happening next week, some of those people will be involved in the judging panel as well.
Great. So you're kind of able to build buy-in around the Heineken business into this idea by making sure those people are kind of part of the process, they're part of the judging panel, they feel kind of invested in the process.
Yeah, we need to make sure that when we're doing this, that great, we'll do a pilot and we'll work with the startup that's won, but we need to make sure that on the other end of it, if it is successful, that the business function area that it's supposed to benefit is bought into it, because at that point you start getting into the funding part of it as to who's coughing up the money to pay for this. But that's where we cover the cost for the brew house type activity, and then we split it when it comes to the pilot.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really the critical part, isn't it, with these kind of projects? It's okay getting the initial interest in the pilot, but then how do you actually make sure that that program kind of continues running and is integrated into the business in the long term? Maybe you could share with us kind of any insights into how you've kind of managed to keep those projects running beyond the initial pilot. How have you managed to keep that interest up from the business?
It has been a challenge because, like I said at the start of this, my team didn't exist over a year ago. So we've been building out this brand, and I've been taking time out to go to each business function area, to things like town halls, to share the message of what we're doing. We've built a kind of process for people to engage with us, and we've got our champions that are in each of the function areas as well. So we're definitely kind of driving a bit of a buzz around what digital innovation is. For a lot of people in Heineken, they're not aware of it. They don't know. It's for them, innovation is a new product to get excited about. So they kind of look at this and go, well, what is it you're doing? It definitely has been a challenge, but I think being very vocal, being passionate about what we're doing, driving real results. So when we're doing pilots, we're sharing all the kind of milestones that we hit on our social platforms, really cascading what is the benefit that we're driving here. And I think if you're really crystal clear on that, then that's when you get the kind of buy-in from people, and they're really incentivized to come and actually speak to you about any ideas that they may have.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Heineken invested 45 million euros into a new R&D centre, which I think is bringing together kind of talent from across Heineken from 12 different countries. What do you think that kind of tells us about where Heineken is headed and where maybe the brewing industry as a whole is headed?
Yeah, so this one is another one that's fairly new to me. They released it, did a big kind of town hall type event to cascade a lot of information to us and the rest of the opcos. But it's newly launched by our global colleagues. It's for the brewing industry. I would say it's quite difficult for market penetration. So true innovation, I would say, is the way to keep beer an exciting category with some of the stuff we've been doing in the likes of Studio. But as a company, Heineken has always been seen as pioneering and leading by example. An example of that is being the first brand to offer a 0.0 product, which everyone will see. It's all over kind of Formula One, everything to do with that. It's been in Coronation Street, if I remember correctly. I don't get my soaps wrong. We've done a load of partnerships with different things as well as football. But yeah, recognising that I guess global brands are somewhat remaining flat in the value in the last few years. You do see a lot of new stuff coming into play. I would find most big brewing industry companies making innovation a priority for their future strategies.
One thing we haven't really touched on yet, but I guess it's kind of going back to the changing priorities and desires of consumers, is sustainability. So what impact is the need to be more sustainable having for Heineken as a company from your perspective with your team?
So I actually have something that's very hot off the press. I seen it yesterday on LinkedIn, I think. So for the first time, we are named as one of the most sustainable companies of 2025 in Time and Statista's top 500 list. But I would say before adding that in, Heineken, I wouldn't say is new to this. Sustainability has always been, I've been in Heineken for the last 3.5 years, but from colleagues I speak to, it has been a core objective when looking especially at our supply chain and more recently in product development. So in the last year or so, you'll have seen that all of our cans have shifted to cardboard grips rather than plastic rings. We see kind of innovation shine most for sustainability within our breweries. We've been bringing in a number of different efficiencies in those areas to improve sustainability in the production cycle. A great example of this, it was posted on LinkedIn, so it's kind of fairly public knowledge, but in one of our UK breweries, we had a young graduate engineering colleague, and he used the waste from the brewing process to create a cement-like substance, and he used it in a 3D printer to create a Heineken star. And obviously this was just part of a pet project that he was doing, but it shows us that there is opportunities for us to look at completely removing any waste in the brewing process.
Interesting. That's really cool. So I guess it sounds like at Heineken, there's kind of room for people to kind of go off and experiment with their own projects to try and shape things from a sustainability perspective. So Gordon, one question we like to ask everyone who comes onto the podcast. Every innovation leader has failures. So what's one project you could tell us about that perhaps didn't work out as you were hoping, but maybe taught you quite a lot?
Sure. So like I said earlier, I'm kind of early on in my innovation journey within Heineken. So while I'm running a number of initiatives right now, I can't really use any that have failed just yet. They are still kind of going strong, which is good to hear. But an example that has taught me something important when we are innovating that happened within Heineken is our Strongbow brand. So we did create a new product called Strongbow Ultra, and the point of it was to aim at the younger demographic, showcasing a low-calorie, lower percentage alcohol. And it's not to say that the product itself was the wrong idea. It's, I think, tying it to this brand image and influence was wrong. So if we look at, I mean, this is my personal take on it, but Strongbow consumers are kind of ones that are purchasing based on affordability. They're kind of low value, high consumption patterns, and I wouldn't really necessarily associate them with caring about low calorie and percentage offering. So whilst the brand went through a massive rebrand investment, kind of steering away from the black and the gold and the old branding, I think it just steered away too far from that brand identity, and it kind of alienated the consumers to the point where the product is now discontinued. So all of that kind of investment has just went down the drain. So this can be things seen in things not in Heineken, but if you look at like the Jaguar rebrand, that was a monumental change in the brand identity, and I would say it's more likely to be detrimental than helpful to its longevity if you're doing that.
Sure, yeah. I think not had a Strongbow for a long time. That was kind of my drink of choice, music festivals, because you could keep it in your tent, and if it got warm, it was still drinkable.
Totally.
Yeah, not sure I was worried too much about the other parts of the marketing behind it. We've talked quite a bit already about kind of changing consumer behavior, trends, technology trends. Maybe you could share with us, perhaps, are there any other kind of innovation catalysts that people perhaps don't realise are going to be really important over the coming years?
This is a really hard question to answer, like right now in the world. I feel kind of overwhelmed trying to keep up with everything. I feel like we're clawing back more physical interactions, less technology focus, back to our real grassroots. The nostalgia of the 90s and the early 2000s, everybody is seeing flare jeans coming back into fashion. Heineken created a phone called the Boring phone. This was something that sold out due to its popularity, and because of that, they then developed an app. So you can go in the App Store right now and look at the Boring phone. It blocks all your notifications. It turns your phone back into a Nokia brick, essentially. Whilst I would say this, tech isn't stopping anytime soon. Your Gen AI, your AI agents, your physical robots. I feel like it's like two sides pulling equally on a global stage. Consumer behavior, burnout of tech. I think that will probably be the biggest kind of catalyst for innovation. It did a lot post COVID when you remove physical interaction for so long, for so many years with people. Whilst tech can be used for good, I think it's to be seen as more of an enabler, but not something that people build their lives around.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Definitely feels like, I don't know, personally have quite a lot of nostalgia for sort of, simpler times when we weren't glued to our phones and, you could just go to the pub in your flared jeans with your brick phone, have a pint of Strongbow with the classic marketing behind it.
The only device you were glued to was a Tamagotchi to make sure it didn't die.
Exactly. Final question for you today, Gordon. What advice would you give to other digital innovation leaders that are trying to drive experimentation in established, long-running companies like Heineken?
I would say to try and detach yourself from any sort of agenda or buzzwords that you've heard in some sales pitch for some cool innovation that you want to try and do in your company. I think you should always be looking at what value that you're trying to generate. So I find this particularly critical because once you can quantify what that value is for your business, then you're more likely to get people to buy into it at an easier rate. And obviously, depending on your business size, the bigger you are, then that would unlock as well investment for you to actually be able to get some momentum on this initiative, whatever you're trying to do.
Fantastic. Wise words. Thank you, Gordon. All right. I think that's us done for today. So thank you very much for joining us. Just before you leave us, what's next for you, Gordon? How can our listeners learn more about your work and connect with you?
Like I said kind of earlier, touched upon this. So I'm still very much in the growth phase. I'm in a year into building a new team, a brand, working on some cool innovation experiments in the UK for Heineken. A lot of it is very new to me, but I mean, I like the challenging dynamic that it brings, Personally speaking as well, my life is going through massive change. Got my first child due in September. So I'm doing a lot of prep to grow my knowledge and kind of being a father, being a supportive husband to my wife. On top of that, renovating the project that is our house in East Lothian. So I'm sure there will be failures and success stories, both in work and personally. And I'll look to share more of those on LinkedIn as and when they happen. It's kind of part of my objective at the moment to build a bit more of a brand on social media. So yeah, I'm always tend to be a little more old school and share less on social media, but I do need to start sharing a bit more.
Excellent. Well, you sound like a very busy man, so thank you for taking the time to join us today, and wish you all of the best with all of your endeavours.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me.
That's a wrap on our third episode of Innovation Brief. Thank you to Gordon Hamilton for being with us today and sharing some fantastic insights into his world. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to Innovation Brief and don't forget to leave us a review. It helps other innovation enthusiasts discover the show. We'll be back next time with another great conversation. This has been the Innovation Brief with me, Matt Briggs.